Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Fallout 76. I've been looking at the PTS and there's some changes to the armor system that are actually quite interesting. You may have come across rumors that mutants will become the best legendary. I heard that too, and it seemed that this was going to break the balance of the game. But after testing things myself, I have to say that it's not as bad as people are making it out to be. Yes, mutants will be good, but it's not going to be the best. Aristocrats will be my personal choice, but there's strong arguments for the other alternatives, so it's not absolutely clear cut. You'll see what I mean when we look at the test results. But before we do that, the biggest change is the way armor works. Incoming damage will now be affected by your armor rating first, and then your damage reduction will be applied. This means that the rating of your armor is now much more important than with the current system. It's also been said that the armor equation has been modified to make higher armor ratings more effective. In the current system, just wearing a power armor set was enough to max out how effective armor is. But apparently, you will benefit from higher armor ratings after the update. So it's not just about your legendaries like it's been up to now. And with reduction now multiplying, a full set of troubleshooters will not be as mandatory against the first raid boss compared to other legendaries. Still useful, but no longer the only real option. But before we look at test results, let me remind you that this is the first version of the PTS changes, so they're subject to change. A lot of legendary stars have been changed to now have damage reduction instead of boosting armor rating, which, given that armor is now more important, ironically makes the legendary effects less useful than they used to be. If we quickly go through the list of changes, the highlights are: Mutants is now 5% damage reduction per piece. These should stack multiplicatively, so a full set will be 23% reduction. Pretty much any mid or high level character has multiple mutations already, so this is an easy and lazy option. I can see a lot of people just putting on mutants everywhere and forgetting about it. But personally, I'll be doing something else. Overeaters, which used to be the preferred option for power armor and full health players, will now only give you 4% damage reduction. Which is odd, because it's now weaker than mutants and still requires you to keep up with food and hydration. Eating and drinking isn't a big deal, but there's really no point to overeaters anymore. So basically, the devs are killing overeaters. Bolstering and vanguards got boosted to 10% damage reduction per piece, which is double what mutant gives you. But if you're going low health, then you want unyielding armor. So bolstering will only be useful for power armor, and you have to get down to 5% health for the maximum 10% reduction, which doesn't make it much better than mutants in practice. Basically, bolstering is not a good idea. On the full health side, Vanguard requires 1000 hit points to get the full 10% damage reduction. But as a goal, with the Life Giver perk for extra hit points, I'm getting around 500 hit points. So in practice, it's pretty much impossible to get the full benefit. I tested with a full set of Vanguards and Health, a third star that gives you 20 HP more per piece, so that's 100 more HP for a full set. The UI doesn't tell you what the actual damage reduction is, and when you test it with the armor, it does look like there's a small visible difference, but it's impossible to tell for sure. This is with 3 pieces of Vanguard healthy armor. That's 9 shots for 2/3 of a buff. And 6 shots. Basically, healthy is not a worthwhile property. I think it should be plus 50 or plus 100 hit points per piece. 20 hit points is nothing if you're going for Vanguard. And Vanguard's requirement for 1000 hit points is just too high. I'm not sure how you could realistically meet that, and it's just a lot more difficult than something like Aristocrats. Now, with 2 pieces of Aristocrats Sentinel armor, which should be similar in protection to the Vanguard pieces, 7 shots gives us about 2/3 of a bar, and this is without any armor. That's 8 shots for about 2/3 of a bar. I think we're seeing the impact of armor rating now being the most important factor. 9 shots takes us down to nearly a bar lost. There is a small difference, but Vanguards doesn't seem to make that much difference. But things are different with Aristocrats. If you look at the legendary effects, you can see that it now gives you damage reflection. That's right, reflection, not reduction. This means that it reduces the damage you take and damages enemies by that much. Plus, it goes up to 10% at 40,000 caps. And yes, all these legendary properties stack. I'm using a full set of Aristocrat's Sentinel armor, but at this point I only had about 35,000 caps, which translates to 5% damage reduction. And as you'll see, it's very effective. I took off the ricochet perk, so the only damage to enemies will be from the armor itself. You can see that enemies are clearly being damaged by the Aristocrat effect. But at the same time, I'm taking much more damage than I'm dishing out. So don't expect Aristocrats to make you invincible. This is footage at 9% reflection, again with a full set of Aristocrats and Sentinel. From testing across several days, I got 7% at nearly 37,000 caps, and now 9% at nearly 39,000 caps. So it looks like the effect scales from 30,000 to 40,000 caps, and you get 1% reflection per 1,000 caps above 30,000. It sounds pretty hefty, but for higher level players, it should be pretty easy to stay at 40,000 caps for the maximum benefit. As you can see, the reflection is much more effective at 9%. Against any normal enemy, even level 100 super mutants, you'll be very difficult to kill. You're not invincible, but enemies will usually kill themselves before they kill you, and a single enemy will barely dent you. So I hope that you now understand why I said that mutants is not the best choice after the update. Aristocrats is the better option. It gives you a bigger benefit, 10% damage reflection versus 5% damage reduction, and it's pretty easy to maintain for medium or high level players. But if I was being super lazy, I still wouldn't choose mutants. I'd go for heavyweight instead. This is a new legendary that's replacing weightless. It gives you up to 10% damage reduction, which is the most for any legendary star, and you only need to be close to maximum encumbrance. And I think I'm pretty close to maximum encumbrance, wouldn't you say? The main reason I went into the PTS is that I wanted to see if I could get extra benefits from being more than 100% encumbered. If that was the case, at my weight, I'd probably get more than 100% damage reduction. Can you imagine being so fat that enemies can't hurt you? Huh? Sadly, that wasn't the case. You're capped at 10% damage reduction. It will be amazing, but it looks like the devs accounted for that already. Boo hiss, devs. Boo hiss! But jokes aside, as you can see, a heavyweight Sentinel set is pretty damn good. It doesn't get the damage reflection that you get with Aristocrats, but as far as keeping you alive, it's just as good. A downside is that you'll have to learn it, even if you already know the weightless legendary that it's replacing. So it'll take a bit of time for people to get access to heavyweight, but for fat bastards like me, it will most definitely be worth it. But what if I told you that you can be almost invincible? There's a 4-star legendary module called Reflective. It works just like the new Aristocrats, but it's always at 10% reflection. Unfortunately, it's only available for power armor, but let's see how it stacks. So you have 38% damage reflection from Aristocrats and 41% damage reflection from Reflective. Multiply the leftover damage from the two, and that's about 64% damage reflected back to enemies. And an extra 25% damage reduction from Sentinels. So we reduce incoming damage by just under 73%. We barely take a scratch against even hordes of level 100 super mutants. And because we reflect so much damage, enemies will kill themselves even when we're just standing around. This is even more noticeable against melee enemies. A single bite from the mutant hounds is enough to nearly kill them. 2 bites and they're dead. You almost don't even notice them before they're dead. You just see new dead hound corpses magically appear around you. This means that with enough reflection, the changes to melee and blocking that are coming up are meaningless. Forget blocking. It's better to just let melee enemies hit you and kill themselves instead. So against normal enemies, you're basically invincible. But what about stronger enemies? I tested against the behemoth at Solomon Pond. It is a lot stronger and we take more damage than we reflect back, so you do have to use healing items, but overall it's not that bad by any means. And keep in mind that we're not using the ricochet or bullet shield perks, both of which would give us a noticeable increase to our damage reflection. Anogura is even stronger, but we also reflect that much more damage. So we do have to suck down more healing, but it's easily manageable. If we were using weapons to actually damage the Ogura, it would be a pretty easy fight. At this point it's pretty fair to say that with a bit of healing, you can take on any enemy on the map. But there's an even stronger enemy around. Let's take a look at the raid Centrobot. This footage is with aristocrats at 6%, so not exactly maxed out. Sentinels and reflective are on all pieces as usual. I'm firing a flamer every so often to trigger a bullet shield, and ricochet is also active. The missiles are the worst part, but as you can see, it's all manageable. This means that anti-explosion perks and legendary are now more important than before. I think that you'd still do okay without reflection. In other words, just aristocrats and sentinels should be effective against this boss. You will have to heal a lot more, but a ghoul or a full health character should be able to do it without too much trouble. What this means is that a troubleshooter is not mandatory against this boss, like used to be the case up to now. But let's take it a step further. I've never been able to solo the boss with a low health character. The sheer amount of damage and the lag I tend to get usually kill me before I can heal. Even when playing with a full group, I have to reduce my radiation to 40% of maximum health, because otherwise a single shot is enough to kill me. Trying to solo the boss at low health is just not doable, so the ultimate test is to try and do just that. I have a raid specific set that I convert into an aristocrat, a sentinel and reflective. This character has more than 39,000 caps, so we get 10% on our aristocrats. The second stars are all hardy because it's the explosions that do the most damage. But because we're playing at low health, we can also use an emergency protocols mod on the chest for an extra 50% damage reduction. So that's 75% damage reflected and 91% damage reduced in total. Explosions should get an extra 35% damage off from the hardy legendary stars and the 45% damage reduction from the perk. I'll be using a vampiric Gatling gun for the shield, which also gives me 22% damage reflection from bullet shield. And this Gauss minigun for the body. I ate some food for these buffs. In a full team, they'd be a bit stronger. There's a bit of lag as usual, but it looks like the explosions are what's causing the most damage. You do have to be pretty quick with the healing, but it seems manageable with a bit of luck. And the reflection is taking down the shield pretty quickly, so that part is well doable. It does look like the boss has been given more HP though. The Gauss Mini is a lot less effective than it used to be.
Warning, energy usage critical. Temperatures reaching unsafe levels. Security zones are online. Take shelter.
I barely, we're talking by the skin of my teeth, still managed to kill it, but a win is a win, right? It may have been better to build up Bullet Storm before the shield went down, but the boss is tougher than before. Unfortunately, there seems to be an issue with the UI. You can't see the quest to restart the raid, so this means that I only get one chance to test per character. Anyway, I have to say that the results are pretty good. A full Aristocrats, Sentinels and Reflective set with the right perks will be pretty much invincible in the normal game. Poison and other effects will probably be stronger with the new update, so they're likely to be the biggest issue, which makes the change to the Elemental 2nd star much more important.